Hello, everybody. We are the three Amiibros. Welcome. We are starting. Are you okay?
Yeah,
Is everything okay?
Yeah,
Okay.
but I love the Metroid theme.
It's great.
It seems so desolate and great.
Anyways, we are starting a playthrough of the Forbidden Game, AM2R, another Metroid 2 remake. I'm Daniel.
I'm Jordan.
I am Will.
Let's get this poppin'. So there is some history to this game. This game came out recently. It's been in the works by fans for something like 5 years. And then it came out, and Nintendo almost immediately shut it down. Luckily, it is still available in various ways, let's say.
It's the internet. Nothing really ever dies.
You can find it if you look hard enough.
You don't really have to look very hard at all, actually. It's incredibly easy to find.
It's pretty much.
And even, I even found a Mac version on Reddit.
Oh, cool.
Really?
I didn't know they released a Mac version.
Yeah.
Well, no, they didn't. Somebody was able to port it. There was two different ports. One of them was complete trash, and then it didn't work. And then somebody else actually made one that worked. So I was playing that one.
Awesome. Yeah, this game is awesome. It's basically, so it's Metroid 2, which I think a lot of people probably haven't played because it's a Game Boy game. I have not played it. I haven't played Metroid 1 for that matter. But basically, this takes Metroid 2 and turns it into a Metroid Zero Mission type thing. So it actually has a map screen. But it's pretty incredible. There's a really great article on Waypoint, which is Vice's gaming site, which talks about how it got made, and it's pretty amazing because they actually they're using Metroid 2 as a base, but it kind of ends up being its own game entirely because just by way of it being a Game Boy game,
Yeah.
there's all of these different, the scale of character to level is so weird that they basically have to blow out these levels and make them a lot bigger, and in doing so have to actually change a lot of gameplay stuff because they have to change how Samus moves to navigate those environments, and they have to change enemy behavior so that it makes sense and it's balanced. So it's kind of its own game. As you can see here, it's actually got a codec type thing in it, which is kind of interesting. Gives you a little bit of background on some of the stuff. It's not super necessary, but I like that they added it in there.
We should bring light to the fact that this was made primarily by one person, Milton Guasti. I'm not sure if I pronounced his last name correctly, but he also goes by, I believe, Dr. M64 on Twitter and whatnot. But yeah, and this was years in the making, and I think we talked about it in another episode of I think it was Donkey Kong, Dan, but he started this project as really just a side project, thinking that this would be a far not as huge a commitment that it turned out to be.
Yeah.
And as Vice put it, this really became a project that really became the hope for the Metroid community to finally get the second, Metroid 2 remade as we see it here.
Yeah, especially as Nintendo themselves are completely uninterested in releasing really any other Metroid games at this point. So someone else has to pick up the slack.
Yeah, but also honestly, Metroid 2 is the game that really is begging for a remake. I've played the original Game Boy game, and it's the entire game is limited by the fact that it is a Game Boy game, which is kind of sad because it actually is a pretty good game. But there's no map. It's black and white. You can't really tell where anything is, and a lot of the times, a lot of the enemies are really hard to deal with because you can't aim diagonally.
Jordan, I'm curious about your perspective because you played the original one. How close is AM2R to the original? Because I know some if not all of the mini bosses in AM2R are original creations. I think it's really just is the map similar? Is it really just the fact that you're hunting Metroids the only parallel?
It's hard to really tell exactly how much it lines up because, like Dan said, there's so, you can't just simply one-to-one transfer it into a sort of a modern type of game because everything was so squished and sized weirdly, and the maps were really really weird. So like, it's hard for me to really say like, oh, this is sort of accurate to this, but it's like when you do play it, like you do, if you play the original, you do know like a lot of things that are like similar to certain aspects, and even like I think the mini bosses for it's hard for me to say because I haven't actually I've started playing AM2R, but I haven't finished it. Mini bosses I think are basically the same, except like they aren't restricted by like the crappy Game Boy graphics. So like it's I mean, it's spiritually, it definitely works as a like sort of a remake of Metroid 2. Functionally, it proves it because you have a map. I love how they have the scan thing because it's sort of the scanning thing for Metroid Prime without actually having the scan function, and it's allows you the affordances of moving around in bigger environments and being able to shoot diagonally because, like, Metroid 2, I actually, it's probably one of the most scariest Game Boy game I've ever played. It's not as scary as in, like, a traditional horror. It's scary because, like, the enemies in this game are actually, like, really hard and really fearsome to fight. And it's especially, part of it was because, like, you couldn't aim diagonally. That was really the biggest problem. But it's like later on when we start hunting Metroids, like these you'll just be like walking around, suddenly just a Metroid just comes out of nowhere. You have to just deal with it. And they
this game is very, very tense.
Yeah.
I mean Metroid is really heavily influenced by like the Alien games or the Alien movies, or at least the first one especially. So here's our first Metroid. This little shell is the only indication you get of when a Metroid is like nearby at all.
Nice dodge.
Thank you. Yeah. This is my first. So what you're seeing here is like my first playthrough of this game. So there are gonna be some clips of me sort of figuring stuff out as I go.
Yeah. But Dan, if you think this is hard right now, like imagine doing that exact same movement pattern, except you cannot aim diagonally.
Yeah, totally. So that's the only indication you get that shell, that like a Metroid is nearby. And usually when you walk into a new area, the scanning thing will say like, oh, there are 8 Metroids in like this area. But there are some real tense moments in this because and the thing is about like, you know, that a lot of the time, like you won't see like that sort of shell around like where the Metroid is. Like you'll just be like wandering around, suddenly you see a shell out of nowhere, and you have like what 3 different rooms you can go to, and like, oh crap, there's one around here. Where is it? Yeah, totally. It's I like this game a lot. One thing I really like about it is that it's like a Metroid game that's actually about Samus just being a bounty hunter and killing Metroids, like with nothing else.
No, it's a Metroid game about Samus and not the crap that was Other M. Other M was not about Samus. It was about some Samus that was not Samus.
And for all our thoughts on that, you can check out our playthrough of Metroid Other M. But like,
or I can continue to bitch about it.
A game like Super Metroid, for example, is very much about like, oh, the Metroid is a little baby, and Samus is motherly to it, and all these things. And like, oh, and there's Ridley, who's like a bad guy. Like, this game doesn't really have any bad guys. It just has like the horrifying existential threat of like this alien species, and you have to just kill all of them.
The funny thing I find about that, though, is that because chronologically, this is, I think, the second. No, I'm sorry, no, it's not second, but it is, no, because it takes place before Super Metroid.
Yeah.
But like, you realize like she kills all the Metroids here, and that just pretty much bites her as soon as Metroid Fusion comes around.
I think I actually like the fact that they interjected a story into this game, because for once I feel like the Federation just aren't being a bunch of jerks interfering in like, you know, a planet's natural growth and development, because as we see throughout the gameplay of the game, these Metroids evolve incredibly fast, and they are very ferocious. So they need to quench the threat before it gets out of hand.
Yeah, but actually the Federation is actually messing up a regular planet, because this is like the native planet of the Metroids.
Yeah, but eventually those, like, what are they called? The Zeta Metroids by the end of the game? Jesus Christ, like, if those things escape the planet, like, we're toast.
No, but I think they said somewhere that Metroids only evolve in their original habitat. They don't evolve anywhere else unless they're like stimulated by like phazon or experiments or something.
Yeah, there's something like that.
Point being, they don't want to extract them and bring them back to like a Federation base, which is usually how shit gets started in most Metroid games. Like
Well,
here, it's just
it's how it
be a
happens
bounty
anyway.
hunter and get them the hell out of there.
Yeah, I just like that this game actually treats, like, a lot of the earlier Metroid games, or rather a lot of the later ones, are all about, like, these sort of personal stakes, or, like, these things of, like, having some sort of emotional duress, even though that stuff is sometimes pretty light. Again, it's like how in Super Metroid, Samus becomes a protector of this baby Metroid. Or how in Metroid Fusion, it's like, oh, there's this suit and it wants to eat you, and all these things. This game is just like, hey, Samus is a bounty hunter, and guess what? She's gonna bounty hunt. Like, she's got paid to kill some stuff.
And she doesn't bitch about every single thing.
No, she's actually pretty chill about everything. Like even Dan, to what you were saying about the baby Metroid and oh, you're in a pickle.
I'll be fine. Don't worry about it.
What you were saying about the baby Metroid from Super Metroid, like here where we team up with a Metroid later on in the game, spoilers, Samus is just sort of like, all right, cool, this is happening. Then, you just proceed with the game.
Though I find it kind of funny that it's like, she just got hired to destroy all the Metroids, and then suddenly at the end it's like, oh, baby Metroid, I'll keep it.
Oh, the baby Metroid helps you out at the end.
Yeah, but she could have easily just like killed that thing and got screwed later.
Yeah, if you play through this game, you'll see that that's not really a possibility in the situation that she's in. But spoilers, we'll get to that when we finish the series.
Ooh. So how do you guys like find the controls for this game?
That's great. So I will actually say that throughout this playthrough, I was playing this with an Xbox 360 controller.
Same.
Which has a really awful D-pad. Just traditionally, the D-pad on the Xbox controller sucks because it's just like one piece, like one circular.
It's actually
piece.
an analog stick.
No. I'm talking about the D-pad, not the analog stick. I didn't. Use...
No, I said underneath the D-pad is actually an analog stick.
Oh, really?
It sure as hell
Yeah.
feels like one.
Interesting. Yeah, so the D-pad is I mean, I don't know about you, Will, but I always find that in like playing 2D games with an analog stick just feels kind of weird.
Oh, it's horrible. It's the worst. Don't do it.
Yeah, and the D-pad kind of sucks, so you will see definitely some moments of the controller working against me. Not to place blame on anything, you know, it's not always the controller's fault, but it is a bit of a bummer. I unfortunately did not get my PS4 until after finishing this playthrough, and would have much rather have used the PS4.
Yeah, I played a little bit of this while I was on vacation in the summer, and I haven't really gotten back into it. But like, I didn't have an Xbox controller at the time, so I had to play it with a mouse and keyboard, and man, that is not fun.
You know what?
That-
I used to play all the old Metroid games with a mouse and keyboard, or really just a keyboard, because I used to emulate them all. I didn't have a Super Nintendo, I didn't have a Game Boy Advance, so I was just on my computer or on my keyboard, and you know, I'm not gonna say it's a good way to play the game, but I think it's totally possible.
I
As
actually
someone
did
who
play.
forcibly got used to it.
I actually played Super Metroid for the first time I finished Super Metroid for the first time on the Wii U, and I loved that version just because the Wii U Virtual Console allows you to remap any of the controls to anything on the gamepad. So like the default controls were pretty crap, and then I just like, you know what, it'd be easier if I had this button right here and this button right there. I did that, and I had an amazing time for the rest of the game.
Yeah. So one other thing I really love about this game is that I actually find the environment to be like super, super interesting. Whereas I find a lot of old Metroid games, I think, I mean, the environments are great. They're really good for atmosphere. But they have this weird problem of like, oh, there's Chozo stuff everywhere. Why are there Chozo statues? I don't know. What are they? Who knows? But in this game, you're sort of on the home world, and you can tell because like, the area that we're in right now is like very obviously a place of worship, and like there are statues devoted to things. You know, there are all these like sort of weird glyph type things everywhere.
And we'll see this generator room later, which, you know, indicates that there was some sort of like technological advancement here at some
Totally,
point.
yeah. There's just a lot of stuff, and part of that, the codex actually helps a lot there. Even though, again, I find the codex to be like unessential, but kind of interesting. In that it will tell you why that area exists. Like, it'll say, like, oh, this area is here to pump water to other places. And I just think that's, like really nice to have, and gives this game a sense of, like, actual place that I find a lot of these games sort of have. They have on, like, a sort of atmosphere level, and that's kind of it.
I think why the scanning option, or the scanning feature, was so well received by, like, fans who played this game is because it's not in your face either. Like, you have complete control over, you know, whether it even appears on your screen, or, you know, if you just want to, or yeah, if you wanted to indicate, because I had mine turned off for the longest time. I had no idea that it was a setting. But when I turned it on, I'm like, oh, I actually really like this. But I can also appreciate that the game gives you the option, because I know this would annoy, like, you know, a couple players out there.
Yeah, I mean, it's a very like BioWare game type thing. They always have codexes in their game, which are sort of these, like, you go through the game and you, like, unlock entrances into this codex, and that's, like, that'll give you, like, more stuff. Nice. So, like, they do that in Mass Effect, where if you, like, encounter a new alien race, it'll give you a little bit about that race's culture. But, like, you don't need to read it. I always do, but it's, like, it's there if you need it, and if you don't want to touch it, like, that's fine.
Yeah, well, I think you also do that in stuff like Assassin's Creed, where they just tell you all the historical information.
Yeah, I actually really like that stuff in Assassin's Creed because it's all historical information. It's
yeah,
like,
I actually read that, a lot of that. It's like, oh, I didn't know this guy was a thing, and I, like, look him up on Wikipedia. I was like, oh yeah, he was an actual person.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, question about the Metroidverse, you guys. Do you guys think they're actually just going to answer any questions at some point in a future game about the Chozo?
First off, that would require them to make another game, which they won't. But also,
no, but it's like in all Metroid games, that seems like the one thing that this sort of ignore or try to avoid.
Look, it's sort of like the Mega Man X conundrum, where, you know, everyone knows that Dr. Wily created Zero. Capcom will just never say it. They'll never make that connection between the classics and the X series of games. Nintendo, for some reason, just doesn't want to touch the Chozo outside of making them, like, this weird enigmatic presence in all Metroid games, and that's it.
Yeah, I think part of it is that it honestly doesn't matter. Like, it's just, like, I don't know about you guys, but that is not a burning question I have in my head. I play Metroid games because the worlds are really nice and it's fun to move around, and I love the progression of like, making my way through this giant map. I 100% do not play it for plot or really anything other than, like, mood.
Time to hit up fanfiction.net.
Honestly, though, I do want to see that answered, though, because, like, it's every time, like, the shows are brought up, it seems like they have, like, their fingers in, like, everybody's cookie jar, and I want to know why.
I think that's it, though, like, because Metroid Prime is the most lore we're ever gonna get from the Chozo species, and, like, I think we get a pretty ample amount there. Like, yeah, these guys they're pretty advanced. They're a pretty advanced race. For the most part, they were wiped out by the space pirates somehow. I think when... don't take this with a grain of salt, but
I don't think they actually said why they were wiped out.
I think it's when around the time Ridley joined the rankings of the space pirates that, like, Ridley was the sole reason why they were wiped out for the most part, and that was it.
As far as I know, they just sort of randomly disappeared and no one knows why.
So a lot of this is very sci-fi tropey. You saw this in a lot of games a couple of years ago. Like, Mass Effect has this plot. Assassin's Creed has this plot, speaking of two games that we've already talked about. And a couple other things have it too. I think Gears of War might have a similar thing of just like, oh yeah, there was an ancient alien race and they're all wiped out and we're still using all their stuff. Like, that is just like a basic sci-fi video game trope at this point. And it's just kind of like,
the plot of
who
Halo?
Cares?
Yeah, isn't that Halo?
Yeah, actually, yes. Halo also has that exact same plot.
Well, there we go.
It's just what it is. It's just like, it's fine. You don't need to know. The answers are just going to be disappointing and or boring. So why bother?
Because we need to know.
No, you don't.
I wonder what
let mysteries be mysteries. You can see I'm speeding up time here a little bit because took a really long time to do this. There we go.
I think how I did it, I just kept spamming the bombs and didn't let up till it let me up to the top platform there.
Yeah, that is not a good way to go about it most of the time. It just takes a really long time, and it's very frustrating.
Oh, it took like 30 seconds.
Oh, well, aren't you special? God.
No, I had a lot
Jesus.
of good. I had a lot of good luck with timing the bombs for this game. Like there were a lot of times when I just spammed the hell out of them and got exactly where I needed to, probably earlier than I was supposed to. But
Fair enough.
yeah, no, I really like that.
You know what I really miss though? The thing they added in Metroid Prime 3 where they finally let you just jump in Morph Ball form. I miss that.
Oh, they do that in this game. You can jump in
they?
Morph Ball form in this game. Eventually, yeah, you get a power up that lets you jump in the Morph Ball,
Oh, okay.
which is nice. That's a really nice thing. It lets you move around into a lot of spaces you couldn't move around in before. Almost like a Metroid game.
Oh,
Imagine that.
what?
Oh, see, there's a shell.
Oh,
There's a shell. There's a little bugger around here somewhere.
yep. An adorable little jellyfish bugger.